Hey guys, welcome to Nighters Forge number 4. We have some good topics for today. One thing I wanted to mention is that the countdown to Treasures Below will be starting quite shortly here. We will be starting to drop some teasers. I mean, we dropped one yesterday, I believe, and I think there's another dropping today or tomorrow. But we will have pretty much teasers dropping every couple days ahead here. And ramping up with bigger and bigger ones. A lot of them videos and different information about each of the systems coming in Treasures Below. And we will also have a updated roadmap being dropped quite soon here as well. I don't want to say a date because I want to make sure that they can drop it at the right time. But quite soon here, we will be dropping the date for Treasures Below, the date for the Epic Games release, all of the stuff coming in the expansion, the updated roadmap, and a bunch of stuff, because on our existing roadmap, we pulled a lot of stuff that was planned for like end of this year. It's already coming in Treasures Below. A few things were moved out, really just based on what we felt the game needed. And then obviously a bunch of things that are coming that were never mentioned in the roadmap and never included in our initial roadmap. So we will be dropping an updated one of those quite soon. But for now, let's drop into some community suggestions and ideas. So the first one, this is a long one. So today we'll probably do this one and then one or two more, just as it is a very long one. And then we will do more next week as usual for Nighters Forge number 5. So with this one, problem, cosmetic materials from dynamic. This is a long one, so bear with me, but I'm going to read it out. Cosmetic materials from dynamic events that are high tier are nearly impossible to obtain. Some groups of people have been farming a dynamic event 2 to 3 times a day for 1 to 2 months, and not a single individual has obtained even one of those cosmetic materials yet. This repetitive grind and the not knowing when they will get, or worse, if they will get, the cosmetic material from the event they are farming introduces fatigue and flat out de-incentivizes almost everyone to get the cosmetic long term. This makes it such that high-tier cosmetics are near impossible to obtain in a result, and makes dynamic events, especially the hard ones with near impossible drop chance on the cosmetic materials, just realistically unable to obtain from fatigue of doing the events and inevitable quitting of pursuing the cosmetic. So I'm an old school MMORPG guy. And when we do the design on things, we want to have things in the game that are extremely, extremely rare. We like, especially myself, I loved the days where there was a certain cosmetic that one person in the game had, or, 10 people in the game had, but it was extremely, extremely hard to get. And if you were walking around with it, you were an absolute badass. The reason why we only have this with like cosmetic materials and not like standard progression, and why, for example, this cosmetic is not required to like access a certain part of the game or get to a certain area, is because that's the area that we see that this can fit, where you're not like literally unable to progress through the game. You just maybe can't get a cosmetic, or maybe like, because it is just really rare, right? I think things like that are what's missing in modern MMOs, where they're just like, hey, you can have anything you want quite easily. And I think cosmetics are the right place to do that, because it keeps it very special and exclusive. And I think that's important in MMOs. Granted, I understand that from a player POV, if you want a certain cosmetic, it sucks, because you're like, I just want to get it. I don't like how hard it is to get. And obviously you're mentioning like a very rare one, and just how hard it is for them to get it, right? And then even with that, when I say how hard, it's not like, oh, you just need a certain level or, kill a certain boss. It's like, no, I also just need to be a lucky one to get it. And again, I think things like that are special in games. And I understand, though, as a player, you're just like, I just want it, right? And I don't like that that's hard to get or rare to get. And I think it's one of those things that there's like both sides of the coin. I think when a player gets it, it feels incredibly special, because they worked so hard to get it and it took so long to get it. And there's so few in the game that they have something special that no one else has, right? And I think it's a slippery line where you can always just keep making it easier, and people short term are going to like that, but long term it devalues how special that thing is, right? And again, that's why we only do it for cosmetics. It's not like there's like a weapon that is insanely strong and it's RNG based and you have to do it for months and then maybe you get it. because that's one of those things where it's like you're just at now a power disadvantage by not having it, where cosmetic is it's meant to be a show off thing, right? And so this is something where obviously like we can tweak it in a second, right? We can make it 10 times easier to get, or make it that you guaranteed get it after doing it X amount of times or whatever. But the thing is, very quickly devalues the rarity of what that cosmetic is, right? And keep in mind, like, we're not making money by you doing the dynamic event over and over, right? It's not like we charge you each time you do the dynamic event. So like this mechanic or the way that it's designed is in there because of that intention, right? Obviously, we're charging you every time you do the dynamic event and it was that rare. Well, yeah, then there'd be a clear intention of us on why we designed it that way. But ultimately, we designed it that way just because we want to have things in the game that are insanely rare and insanely impressive to have. But that's not, again, a player's always going to want it easier until they have it, and then they're going to want it harder, of course, right? Because they want to remain exclusive with it. I'm going to keep going on this. I just wanted to share like our side, and that's why we have it very rare. And again, certain cosmetics, right? It's not like every single cosmetic in the game is going to be this hard to get, but there are ones that we want to be like incredibly special. When a player has that, when they're walking around with it, it's like, holy shit, they got it, you know? And I understand that many times if you're trying to get that cosmetic, like I assume you are in this, you're going to want it easier, right? And that's understandable at the same time, especially because in many games now it is very, they don't like to put hyper rare things in the game or hyper special things in the game. You see this changing a lot with MMOs because players do generally push them to like make things easier to obtain, right? And again, it's a slippery slope, right? You make one thing, 5 times easier to obtain or twice as easy to obtain, and then they want the next thing easier to obtain, and it's that very slippery slope. But it also, to be clear, feels really shit for the players who do have it, right? If a player worked really hard to get it, and then suddenly we make it easier, that is not a good feeling for those players, right? They feel like, well, what? Like that sucks. I worked hard to get this one. I was one of the lucky ones to get this one, and now everyone can get it twice as easy, 5 times as easy, 10 times as easy. And so generally we don't make changes to these kind of things because of that, because we don't want to suddenly make it where it's like, oh, well, like I was one of the few that had it. Now there's 50 people with it or 100 people with it, right? But let me continue reading here. Introduce a pity system to people who farm cosmetic materials from events. This pity increases the odds of obtaining. Yeah, so again, this is probably the route we would lean towards if we were to introduce that, but it still doesn't change the fact that for everyone who did obtain it, even if, or anyone who just obtains it today or whatever, they're going to feel like, oh, well, I just got completely screwed on this, right? That feels really crappy. I think it's for us more interesting on like future designs, right? Introducing that right away. But again, ultimately, we're okay with certain things if they're not gating the gameplay or like power progression or anything. We're okay with things being super rare. And we understand if you're like, oh, I don't want to hunt for this cosmetic every single day because it's so rare. We understand if you're like, okay, then you're just not going to go for that cosmetic. Like we completely understand that. But we also don't want to suddenly make everything in the game so drowned out that it doesn't feel special anymore for those hyper rare ones, right? And again, that's why a lot of cosmetics in the game are very easy to obtain. Although I have not played many MMO games, I have played games with RNG related things and successfully implemented a pity system. Yeah, I mean, we have a pity system in the game already for like Raven cards and a couple other things. I increase the odds of dropping cosmetic material. Yeah, so I believe you're kind of explaining what you mean on the pity system. Rewarding a soulbound currency. And then drawbacks and missed slots. Both solutions can introduce a loophole that allows players to group up as 20 people. Yeah, we obviously would think on those ahead. But with solution 1, implementation detail, player completes an event, system rolls, chance of attaining the mat. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, like it's just a different way of doing the pity system where you're actually getting an item. So again, it's for us, it's a kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario where like we want those very rare things, and when we remove them, people ask like, hey, bring like high dopamine drops that are incredibly rare, right, to the game. Like that was one thing even in the building of RavenQuest. That was a constant thing is people were saying like, oh, we want that thing that's so exclusive and special that like 0.001% of players have it, right? And so that's why we introduced that through cosmetics, because we're like, this is something that won't block a player's progress. It won't hurt their experience. It won't, have a big power gap because of it or anything. But ultimately still something like really cool to chase after and be very special to have it. But again, I would say that if you're a player that's like, I don't want to do this dynamic event anymore, like I'm going to quit, I would just recommend not going after that cosmetic. I don't think a single cosmetic is worth running yourself into the ground over. I think the people that do it, when they get it, it makes it all worthwhile, because ultimately the person that is grinding the same dynamic event every single day to get this hyper rare item, they're the type of people that like, they're like completionists in game, right? They're gonna want to also get all the achievements in many games and stuff like that. They're a special type of player that cares about those things, and I think it's unfair to them to suddenly make it easier to obtain it for the people who already have obtained it, or also just suddenly making it so common that people are walking around with it like everywhere. And when I say that, obviously the counter is going to be like, oh, well, don't make it that easy to get. But again, it's a slippery slope, right? We make it 50% easier and people are still going to say, oh, I had, instead of like 2 months, I had to do a month, right? Like there's no end to that. And so again, that's why we put it behind cosmetics. We want certain cosmetics to be super rare. We're continuously adding new cosmetics into the game that you can go for if you prefer them. But ultimately, if there's a specific one you want and it's very rare, it's rare because we want it to be rare. We want it to be special. And again, part of it is also we feel it's unfair to the players that did work so hard to get it to suddenly say, oh, now there's a pity system, so everyone's going to have an easier chance getting it, or we made it easier to get overall. But again, it's not that I disagree with your input here. I just feel like it's not really fair to suddenly change that on those cosmetics. I think with future cosmetics and stuff, changing, maybe making a pity system for future cosmetics or certain drops, I think is really interesting and definitely something that we'll look at. But yeah, going on to the next one, very short one. I want a double fishing event, like double fishes or double silver for fish. I think we can definitely cook something like that up. Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. I think something like that could be fun. I think especially with the new rough waters fish mechanic that's coming, I think something like this could even be more hype with that. So all the non-fishers are foaming at the mouth right now. The game has so many creative and immersive active trinkets, but their cooldown usually render them useless. Please decrease active trinkets to 1 minute cooldown so they are more viable. Thanks. Yeah, so I think with active trinkets, we have been kind of looking at a different role in how we want trinkets to behave, because it is awkward when you have active trinkets, passive trinkets. Active trinkets obviously provide like a certain spike for a short period of time, where passive ones are going to be generally just better and simpler because they don't have a cooldown. So they're kind of used differently, but I think trinket balance is definitely something that we want to do. I know the team already made like a big list of adjustments when it comes to active trinkets. I think with that, something that we've been looking at more is we know another 2 gear slots that we want to introduce, and we see them more as kind of filling that active equipment item role, I guess you could say. And that's, I think, the tough part with trinkets. It's hard to balance the active trinkets versus the passive ones, because you can't buff the active ones too much because they do have like a bigger spike to them. But then the passive ones obviously have their edge. It's quite tricky there, and it makes it trickier when it's like the same item slot that's trying to balance both of them. So, but I think very good point, and I know it's something that the team already it's in my to review list, but a breakdown of how they want to change a bunch of the trinkets and readjust the balancing on those. So definitely on the list for the team. With that, we're gonna end this Nighters Forge for today. And because the first topic was a very long one. However, we will have Nighters Forge number 5 coming at you guys next week. And so just for anyone who doesn't know, by the way, for Nighters Forge, basically we take the top suggested topics in our forum on our Discord, so you can open up a topic there. We had one player that was sending me a bunch of ideas that, hey, open one of these, and he's like, oh, it's not going to get upvoted or whatever. It ended up being upvoted and covered last week. So definitely go ahead and toss your idea in there, and if it gets enough upvotes, I will go over it in one of our weekly Nighters Forges. So it's the best way for us to hear from you guys and see what the community is really wanting. And then at the same time, we can share a little bit behind our mindset on things and maybe why we haven't changed them, because sometimes that can be helpful for you guys to understand, like, oh, okay, that does make sense, or at least I can understand where they're coming from on that. And then with that, we generally will review like the top upvoted ones, but it also depends week to week on what I think is most relevant as well. Even if it's not covered one week, it might be covered the next week. We don't like only look at that week, if that makes sense. So we also go back. So Nighters Forge number 5 may have some other things that could have been covered in this one. So thank you so much for joining me, guys. Until next one, happy venturing.